Hey everybody, welcome back to another week here at the Young Turks. Big New Hampshire week, and I am joined to start off this week with some comedy gold. Back after a little bit of a gap, Alonzo Bodden's back in studio.
Yes, it's been a while, but it's good to be back.
It's great to have you here.
Yes.
But in the weekend, you're gonna be at the Bricktown Comedy Club in Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City, my first time working OKC, and
awesome.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll say hi to Chris Paul while I'm there. I'm a Clipper fan. He awesome. Left us, but I'm still cool with him.
And Francesca Fiorentini, always glad to have you here as well.
Yeah, good to be here. What a week it's gonna be.
Oh God, you know, it's like obviously it's gonna get really exciting tomorrow. With New Hampshire, and we're gonna have live coverage. Are you involved in that?
Yes.
You were gonna be involved. I was supposed to, I'm not gonna be there. And so you guys are gonna hold it down, and then-
You're not gonna be in your corner?
No, it's my wife's B-Day. We're going out for a B-Day, which some would say more important than the New Hampshire primary. She's one of those people. And so no, it's gonna be awesome to have you guys in studio.
Much.
And Emma's gonna be calling in from New Hampshire. And then later in the week we'll get the results. So it should be cool.
Yeah. Well, just about what do you think? Another week later, depends on where the tortoise goes and those sort of temperature.
Yeah, you said later in the week. I would go with eventually.
Yeah, I mean we don't have Iowa.
Eventually,
just give enough time for Klobuchar to declare victory. Come on, give her an opportunity. Let's make this thing fun.
Clobe surge.
Yeah.
Clobe surge. I love it. I love it.
Get that Clobe momentum.
I like that Clobe momentum.
So look, through the course of this hour, we're gonna talk about a lot of stuff. At the end, we're gonna be talking about some Fox News promotion for a right-wing comedy special. And I don't know anything about comedy, but both of you do. So that should be really exciting. Along the way, we've got discrimination. We've got Biden lashing out at Pete Buttigieg, and Sanders and his circuits defending himself against some newfound attacks. But before we get to all that, why don't we start off with the most exciting news of the day, the federal budget. Donald Trump has released the first details, his budget proposal for this year. Bear in mind before we get into the specifics that this is not the budget that is necessarily gonna pass. It's almost certainly not the budget that will pass. But here is what he wants. He is, especially because it's not gonna necessarily become law, anything put in here is basically a symbol. It is Trump saying what he wants and what he does not want. So we've got a lot here. It's a $4.8 trillion proposal. That includes $2 billion to fund his enhancements to the border wall. So $2 billion additional dollars for this year. So far, they have spent $18 billion on that wall between the US and Mexico.
This time, the enhancement is just that the wall will stay up, right? It won't be blown over by, what's that thing?
They're actually
wind.
Wind, yeah.
They're going to the third little pig, and they're gonna see if they can build something to withstand the huff and puff. The huff and puff was powerful against the wall. I mean, this is all, the whole budget, it's all fantasy, right? It's like, we're gonna spend this much, and then he increases spending based on economic growth that's never happened.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna happen. But again, this is a political appeal to his base. That's all it is. Then he can say, hey, I put in this and I wanted to do that, and they stopped me from this. And it's all, it's like you said, it's his dream, it's projection, and come on, how much of this did he write?
That's a good point. He liked some of it, but he didn't write it. And so again, like we've said multiple times, you can't necessarily be sure that any of these numbers are gonna end up actually looking like this, but the Democrats gave him billions for his wall last year, and they supported the military budget just a few months ago. So some of it could make it through all the way.
I don't know why we're still paying taxes. Like, what? Like this is ridiculous. Like, it is ridiculous. Like, will someone come after me? Like, listen, I'm not mafia. I'd like to think someone would come after me, though, that I'd be important enough if I evaded my taxes, someone eventually would. One can dream. But I honestly don't know why we are. I mean, again, you're saying the complicity of the Democrats in all this. Every time I think what happens with Democrats is that you say there's gonna be militarization, like border security. You're just gonna call it security, and then eventually that gets siphoned off into building more of this dumb wall. I mean, he's already siphoned off money from FEMA, he's siphoned off money from the military. Like, I don't understand why we are cooperating anymore, but of course I can't say that because I'll be called, like uncivil and not bipartisan.
No, if you were rich enough you wouldn't have to pay taxes. So if you don't want to pay taxes, step up your game. Step up your game.
It's Oklahoma City.
If you could bring home a couple of billion a year, then you wouldn't be bothered paying taxes.
You know, rise and grind.
The thing about the military budget, there's two things I look at this is one, like the veterans portion of the budget. I'm fine with that. The only problem is exactly what you said. It doesn't get to them. See, if it got to them, if it got to improving the veterans hospital budget, if it got to improving their other benefits and stuff like that, you know, they deserve it. And I'd be okay with that. The problem with taxes and the budget is the money never gets to where they say it's gonna go. If the money was actually used to rebuild infrastructure, for example, and you actually saw the roads were getting smoother or bridges weren't falling down, then people be like, oh, okay, I don't mind paying taxes. Hey, wait, there's a new school that got built. So, you know, the thing about the military money is it's political suicide to say no to the military budget. That's the thing. Remember, everyone in Congress, everyone in the Senate, their only job is getting reelected, right? So once they're in, their whole thing is, I gotta keep my job. And it's the first thing that will be used against you. You joke about being uncivil and un-American. If you're in Congress and you vote to cut 1 penny from the military budget, you are obviously in league with the terrorists.
You're
right. You have to be.
Totally.
You know. So I don't know what the solution is. This can't keep going. It's impossible to sustain this. What happens is every 20 years, at 30, the economy crashes, right? Now listen, I'll be honest. I'm an old guy, I've had a good run. You, not so good. But me, I figure by the next crash, I'm gone anyway. So, you know, what the hell?
Just take advantage of it now.
No, you're in for a rough ride. And in this budget, the military is getting like $750 billion. You know, because we're fighting Mars or something. No, just a regular, like, run-of-the-mill budget, $750 billion. And that's not even the full budget. There's all sorts of contingencies and overseas, all that. And look, I think we could easily cut the budget in half, combined with some other changes to our foreign policy, and be perfectly fine. And I know, like you say, they'll say you're not supportive of the military. That's BS. I'm way more supportive. I want really well-paid soldiers with full benefits who are really far away from IEDs and bullets and bombs and rockets because they're here and they're well-paid. That's what I actually want. And I agree, people react negatively to any sort of talk about cutting the military budget, and that's why some people have been trying to shift the narrative about that for a very long time, but it's on us to do that. We have to redouble our efforts in the same way that we've been trying to get people to pay attention to the climate crisis for years and years and years, sometimes for some people decades. We have to do the same thing because we are wasting so much money that could go to so many other things.
Absolutely. I mean, and I don't even know where the money for our allies who end up killing and disappearing journalists goes to. Like, is that in this military budget? Is that in the State Department budget? I'm not sure. I mean, you talk about terrorists, but it's like, as long as it's a state sanctioned, act, there's no terrorism there. What Saudi Arabia does or what Israel does, that's totally fine, right? We can't criticize that, or else we're definitely un-American, etc. This budget, though, I think is brilliant because it really is the continuation of like Bannon's fan fiction between Charles Dickens and Ayn Rand, that he keeps on writing. And like he said it, they're about destroying the state. They want to dismantle the state. And Alonzo's point with like, you don't see the roads fixed, we don't put money into infrastructure. It's this self-fulfilling prophecy because if you don't see it being fixed, you're like, why do I pay taxes anyway? Oh yeah, the state's just gouging me. Everything's run down. It's like, it's all deliberate. And so, we are living in that nightmare fan fiction right now.
And to address your point with the military budget, transparency is part of it because within this budget is just like pay for the troops, for the soldiers, and housing. Like, show us how much money is being spent on that. And we're okay with that.
Let's audit it.
And then maybe we'll cut down on the budget to battle Mars. Maybe that part, maybe Space Force. They've got an emblem now. We'll get them T-shirts and then we'll just stop. And even again, I used to work in this industry, and some of these technological advances made by the military do come back to civilian life. Everything in your car was developed in aircraft years ago. Some of it makes sense and some of it's ridiculous, but they won't break it down. The other thing is, and this is where Trump's base and what you talked about with Bannon is so amazing. They don't even try to lie anymore. You know what I mean? It's just, they just say, we're not cutting Medicaid as they're cutting Medicaid. And their base is sitting there like, well, at least they're not cutting Medicaid. Stupid, it's in here, they're cutting Medicaid, you know? So they can't do any wrong, getting back to what you were saying. They can't, with their base, no matter what they say, we'll play along, we'll believe it.
Yeah, even when the claim that they're not gonna cut it comes 48 hours before the budget that cuts it. Like, it seems like that would be an easy connection to make. And really fast, I just want to run through a couple of the other big changes, mainly in the area of cuts, because you talked about what about our allies? Well, military allies probably gonna be fine. But if you don't have a good military, if you're in trouble, well, you're screwed, because the Trump budget calls for a 22% cut to the State Department and the US Agency for International Development's budget. So effectively, overall, for foreign aid, it is a 21% cut. And generally, when you ask a lot of Americans about should foreign aid be cut, they say yes. When you ask them what percentage of the federal budget goes to foreign aid, they say 20 to 30%. It's a tiny little fraction of that, but they think we're just handing hundreds of billions of dollars every single year, which
that
of course,
the National Endowment for the Arts.
That's 50%.
That's really
I
what's
think.
gouging our pockets.
Cats eats up most of the federal budget, I think.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine if they were publicly funded? We wouldn't have a country anymore.
You'd think with that much money they could do the hands. So really fast, I want to give you just a preview, an idea of what a 21% cut to our foreign aid might produce. So Trump last April froze $450 million in support to El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. That took away needed direct support for people living in extreme poverty and danger in those nations, leading them to seek better opportunities in the United States. In 2018, for example, more than 116,000 Guatemalans crossed over the southern US border, more than any nation except Mexico. Now, the idea that you take away aid for these places that are in a really rough state, things get worse, so they decide to come here. The connection between that and them coming here is not lost on the people who made this budget, because they are putting more money into the wall. They are putting more money into the Department of Homeland Security. So they get what pain and suffering this is going to produce. They just don't care.
Yeah, it's the self-fulfilling prophecy once again. You cut off the aid to these countries in need, you force people to flee, and then you blame them for their own destitution. And listen, I think we don't talk about this enough, but I think that the refugee crisis and the migrant crisis, I'm gonna call it a crisis, is this hemisphere's version of the Syrian refugee crisis. And it's gonna require, like, I'm not saying it's gonna be a simple fix, but it's going to require a multinational solution that crosses borders, right? That has to do with both trade and safety. Obviously, it has a lot to do with us not, because I'm sure we're not cutting, I don't know how much military aid we're cutting. We might be cutting humanitarian aid, but our military aid might be continuing to funnel through there. But anyway, the point being is that we need to solve this. We need to fix this. I think no American wants to say that Salvadorans or Guatemalans should have to leave their country, If they need to seek asylum, I believe that they should be able to seek asylum in the States. But like, I don't want to create the conditions for them to have to leave in the first place, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, it's back to the cruelty. It's like, if cruelty is your aim, if an ethno-nationalist, extremist agenda is your aim, this is how you go about doing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, we could get a lot of that humanitarian aid. Let's just cut out the golf trips to Mar-a-Lago. You know, that's 1/3 of the money that we're spending on humanitarian aid around the world. I mean, what you said about the self-fulfilling prophecy, sure. Take away their money, take away their food, take away their housing, take away any incentive, and they're gonna wanna come to a country where they feel they have a better opportunity. But there's no profit in building opportunity in their country. That's not sexy. What's sexy is, what gets you votes is saying, oh, look, here's another march, we gotta build the wall. You ever notice the refugee march, the
caravans?
The caravans only happen a month before an election.
Yeah, that's weird.
The only time there's a caravan a month, and then the day after an election, all right, break it up, go home. It's like they're Hollywood extras. It's like we're gonna listen. We're gonna need.
It's Trump. They might be.
We're gonna need 50,000 extras to march toward the border. All right, that's a wrap. Everybody go home. Pick up your voucher.
It's the most see-through every single time. Really fast. Let's go through a couple more cuts just so you know. Now, we pointed out They say we're not cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, even though he has already said that he will in an interview. Then he tweeted that he wouldn't. They're cutting $4.4 trillion over a decade, $130 billion effectively in cuts over prescription drug prices through Medicare, 292 through safety net cuts, including things having to do with work requirements for Medicaid and SNAP, and also $70 billion cut through limiting eligibility for federal disability benefits. So politicians are often really dishonest. They hide what they want to do. So I would like to give credit to Donald Trump and the Republicans heading into their election, saying, no, we're gonna cut trillions from the most popular programs in the history of American governance. So good job there. Really fast, let's also note, I believe that Greta has had an effect. The EPA is gonna receive a 26% cut, so that's impressive. HUD is gonna have a 15% cut, and you know what? They're even cutting the Centers for Disease Control by 9% as the coronavirus is all over the headlines. It isn't actually significant in that way in terms of setting the agenda for the CDC, but they don't care. No, all these things, the EPA, HUD, CDC, that doesn't benefit billionaires, it benefits dumb schmucks like us.
Well, again, their base doesn't believe that. I mean, you have a base that votes against its own best interest, right? So when you have people who are voting to eliminate the EPA when the mine is right next to them, when the toxic dump is right next to them, or whatever, then why not do it? You know, I mean, from the point of if you're the rich Republican businessman to whom these regulations cost money, are you kidding? Do you know how they're probably amazed? They're like, really? They're gonna just let us dump this sludge?
Yeah.
Well, I'll be damned. Yeah. Well, let's get the sludge dumping, right? I mean, it's fascinating, but it's true. You have and this is a locked-in base that don't bother us with the facts or anything else. Our kids getting sick, the hospitals now 100 miles away, whatever. Any of that, all you do is say, well, that was a Democratic Congress. They're like, yeah, and so it's easy. It's too easy.
And that's the thing is that this stuff gets lost in the budget. Yes, this is arguably the most unsexy topic ever, and no one's gonna go back and be like, I wonder why the coronavirus broke out in late 2020 throughout the country. Oh, it's because we gutted the CDC, or So I think we need a plan to put very hot actors to work in explaining the national budget, like a la Margot Robbie in the bathtub in the movie that I'm forgetting.
About the housing crash.
Yeah, I was gonna say Moneyball, but it's the same director as Moneyball. The point is we need more, if the Oscars could just explain the budget as they're walking on the red carpet. Is that too much to ask?
Yeah. Joaquin did his part, I guess, on some of these. But we'll get to that in a second
hour. Joaquin was all over the place, but I love him, he's great.
Do you really think that any Trump supporter is going to be listening to one of you Hollywood liberals?
That's true.
Yeah, I do know every right-wing personality was watching because they were all live tweeting the entire thing as they were saying they weren't watching. It's fair that they knew what was going on. And if you are, if you're a Trump supporter, maybe you're a conservative who doesn't love Trump, but you still think that the Republicans are the party that's going to keep you safe, just bear in mind that, yes, they will protect you from caravans that they hype up the danger that are not actually dangerous to you and your family. But for things like, infectious disease, the climate being destroyed, more natural disasters in the future, massive cuts to that. They're not just not going to protect you, they're literally disarming the agencies that are set up right now to protect you and your family. So bear that in mind as we head into an election. Okay, with that, we're gonna take a short break, but come back, lots more to get to.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you wanna get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
First hour, everybody. I started the show by saying how excited I was to have both of you on, and apparently I was not the only one.
Yeah.
Salty Sage wrote in a member's comment saying, Alonzo and Francesca, this feels like a power panel. And Liliana said, any day with Francesca on is an epic day. Super stoked Alonzo is going to be in my neck of the woods too, changing my plans this weekend. Step up your funny tonight, John. No, I'm not trying to compete, I look like an idiot. And Progressive in a Moderate World said, Trump watched Les Mis right before working on the budget and thought, hey, great idea.
Exactly.
Do they have a cartoon version of Les Mis?
I was gonna say, there's no way Trump could sit through Les Mis.
No.
Maybe the first 3 minutes, 5, something.
That's about as good as he's gonna get. Yeah, oh, by the way, if you would like to have your members' comments read, you're probably gonna have to be a member. And if you wanna be one of those, you can go to tyt.com/join to become a member today, which is gonna get you access not only to all the special member stuff, post games and all that, and other shows, but also the exclusive content that comes at the end of our big election day. So tomorrow we're doing New Hampshire. Almost all of that is for everyone, but there will be a little bit at the end exclusive for members. So a little bit extra if you support the network. And with that, why don't we jump back into it? With Bernie Sanders now by virtually every metric, the front runner in this thing, he is accordingly being attacked more and more. And those attacks are coming from people like James Carville, which we'll get to, but also of course, Donald Trump. Here is Bernie responding to some of Trump's attacks against him.
Well, I think he's a communist. I mean, look, I think of communism when I think of Bernie. Now, you could say socialist, but did he get married in Moscow?
We got a president who is a pathological liar. He lies all the time. No, I did not get married in Moscow. I participated in creating a sister city program with the city of Yaroslavl when I was mayor of the city. We had Republicans with us, people, city officials. So that's a lie. And obviously, I am not a communist, and I presume the president knows the difference. Maybe he doesn't.
I would bet every dollar I have that he could not give a convincing definition of both separately.
Yes, he could.
Yeah, I think he could.
Putin has taught him. Putin, that's one he better not get wrong. Putin's like, all right, this question you better know.
We've been over this.
You'd think with his history in Moscow, he wouldn't bring it up.
Yeah, it seems odd to go.
I'm just saying,
true.
there are certain towns I've been to that if you ask, the best I'll do is admit I've been there. Won't say there was anything that happened. No one else was involved.
Yeah, it wasn't in a hotel room with sex workers doing their job that might have involved, we don't have to talk about urine. Did I say urine? I did.
Wasn't something R. Kelly would call a holiday weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're really fast on that. I don't necessarily want to get so into it, but it is odd to pivot from years of people are being too critical on Russia and its government. They work with us in some ways, strong leadership, gets lots done, like the obvious friendship between them, like, trying to sort of normalize that relationship for several years and then turn back to, he was there. And that is by itself, and obviously he was wrong about the facts, but that seems like a weird pivot. I have no doubt that a lot of Trump supporters will be able to do that. They follow his words.
Well, they'll have to change their Russia is our friend T-shirt. Don't they have those
Maybe they're double-sided?
What? Yes, they are double-sided for sure. Or what was that chant? What was the Unite the Right had a chant? I'm really striking out today, you guys. It's Monday.
Sorry, I don't know. I wasn't at that rally.
What's interesting about Trump and Bernie that I've always found fascinating is that Trump actually understands that centrist Democrats and the establishment Democrats, corporate Democrats, really hate Bernie Sanders. And he utilizes that, he plays on that to actually, I would say, pick off or try to pick off unsuccessfully some people on the left, or more specifically, try to sort of get the independent voters, get even the right wingers who might sort of like Bernie because they like his ideas. He's trying to, and he utilizes it and he does it so well. And now that Bernie is a front runner, he's pivoting to, okay, he's a communist, he's a socialist. Obviously, to me, I wish Bernie would just hit back a little harder on this. We're talking about a president who is he's just a walking corruption case. He runs his administration like a mafia. He's completely bludgeoned every Republican to fall in line with him politically. And he does go into the idea of socialism. And when it comes to Trump's version of socialism, which is corporate handouts, which is overinflating the military, that's taxpayer money too, So somehow we have tons of money when it comes to the military, and we're totally broke when it comes to healthcare.
Yeah. We actually have a little bit more of Sanders where he gets into a bit of that, and he does go a little bit harder against Trump. So let's watch.
In many respects, we are a socialist society today. We have a huge budget, puts money into all areas. Now, Donald Trump, before he was president, as a private business person, he received $800 million in tax breaks and subsidies to build luxury housing in New York. Now, What does that mean when the government gives you $800 million in tax breaks and subsidies? The fossil fuel industry, whose product happens to be destroying our planet right now, receives tens and tens of billions of dollars in tax breaks and subsidies. So does the pharmaceutical industry. The difference between my socialism and Trump's socialism is I believe that government should help working families, not billionaires.
So
there was
that getting the area you want?
There he was.
Yeah.
There he was.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you that they need to hit back harder.
Yeah.
And much harder. Now, this is still, I think the Democrats are still too gentle in a fight. This fight, and I think you give Trump too much credit to say he's aware of Bernie's standing with centrist Democrats, et cetera. He doesn't know. People tell him, but he doesn't know. And the other thing, John, when you talk about how he bounces around, like Bernie said, he's a pathological liar. There used to be a character that John Lovitz did on Saturday Night Live. It was called The Liar. And I can't do it any justice, but what he would do, he'd get caught in a lie and he would just keep going with, like, he'd find something you believe, and then so it's literally like Trump is like doing the character, like Bernie's a communist. Yeah, that's it. He got married in Moscow. Yeah, that's the ticket. And this is, again, if it wasn't real, it would be hilarious. Yeah. He's making up the lies as he goes, right? Yeah. But you have an audience that's believing it, right? This goes back to Barack Obama not being an American, right? Yeah. That the most ridiculous thing. You're like, well, who's going to believe that? Apparently millions, Yeah. There's no subtlety to what Trump does. And I think the Democrats need to learn. I don't think the Democratic Party, the candidates, it's still like, it's all over the place. You know what I mean? When they say there's this super hatred of Bernie, it's like there's no candidate that everybody's getting behind at this point, So they're choosing to hate whoever the front runner is going to be, right? If the front runner this week is Biden, then bring this up about we hate Biden, and if it's Bernie, bring this up we hate Bernie, and blah blah blah. And I don't know how that's going to play out. But when you talk about the fight against Trump, this I love Michelle Obama, but when they go low, we go high. That ain't going to work.
Nope.
When they go low. Go low. Yeah. Go low. And that's the only thing, because unfortunately it seems to be what works.
Yeah. And with Trump, like the media does, like, at least somewhat recently, they like to fact check Trump. But I worry that in his attacks against Sanders, the zeal for it is not gonna be there, because a lot of the media either believes the same sorts of lies about Sanders, or they find it convenient for them to be spread. As a tiny little example of that, in that clip that you saw where he says that Sanders got married in Moscow, I forget if it was Sanders or one of his surrogates, but they were on one of the cable news channels. And the way that was portrayed was Trump joked about him vacationing in Moscow. No, Trump did not joke about anything. He told a lie. He was corrected on the spot by Sean Hannity, a guy who came out looking like he had a connection to the truth. But the media, even that was spun in a way that still sort of made Trump look better than Sanders.
I think he had such a good response though, and I am so sorry that I said I wanted him to be stronger. I think he was really strong, and I think Alonzo's right that other Democrats and the media have to not actually be honest when we're having this discussion. What do you mean when you are saying, but you're a socialist? This country, we shouldn't be socialist. You should define what you mean by that, because it shows that you're not actually listening to what Bernie Sanders is saying. He's never said that he wants to implement socialism in this country. He said he wants democratic socialist reforms, and he's not even really said that. He's just mostly focused on things like healthcare, on a Green New Deal. He's mostly talking about moving the Democratic Party back to being the party of FDR, of the working class, right? And I think this goes to our discussion about the budget. Absolutely, it matters and I think it's important for us to throw back in the faces of anyone who says this is socialism, that we do give billions and billions of dollars to the fossil fuel industry, to the pharmaceutical industry, to the private healthcare industry. That companies get tax breaks left and right to supposedly give us jobs. So that is absolutely matters when we're having this discussion. We should bring it up at every point in turn. The media should bring it up. That is, if we're gonna really have an honest conversation of socialism, let's have an honest conversation about where the money currently goes in our country.
Well, the big problem with the media, I mean, there's a few big problems with the media, but it is another area where Trump's bullying techniques have worked masterfully. Because if you call him a liar, if you call him out on a lie, then you'll lose your White House credential. You know, it's like, oh, well, you're not allowed to ask questions anymore because you pointed out an obvious lie he told, right? And the fact that the media is so owned by corporate companies now, and it is such a for-profit industry, you know what I mean? It's like, well, we don't want to offend the advertisers, you know, which is really bad when we get to the media level of that, right? But that is the big problem. It's such a simple thing, you know, to say, wait, that's not true. Like you. I don't know about you. I watch these news conferences, and I want somebody to be like, hey, excuse me, yeah, that's not true. What you just said, you just made that up. You know, but they can't do it because they'll lose their credential or they'll lose their turn asking questions, right? And their bosses at whatever network they're from are like, you can't do that. You can't blow our access to these
the lies.
White House
We're getting
or whatever
exclusive
you want
access to lies.
Yeah,
here.
it is increasingly difficult for the American public to get any sort of truth.
Yeah,
and that's what's and again, we're in a situation here, and the viewers of TYT are people who are engaged and who are involved. But that unfortunately is not the majority of America. The majority of America might turn on the evening news for a little while or something like that, and just unfortunately don't get informed.
Yeah. I just want to read one of the members' comments because I love the name, co-host Cenk Uygur. I just think that's funny because he's not often here. That was beautiful, man. Bernie really has Trump on the socialism for the rich point. Yeah. And look, with that, I do think we're gonna have to move on. There's some great Nina Turner footage out.
Nina Turner
okay,
footage.
Okay, we're gonna play one. We can only comment for a minute after because we got a million things to get to. But look, you, Francesca, you wanted someone strong.
Yes, I
Bernie
did
Sanders.
want someone strong.
I think I have someone strong. So Nina Turner was on the news, and she was being asked about James Carville's just wild attacks against Bernie Sanders and his movement and his supporters and what it would mean if he were the nominee. And here's a bit of Nina Turner responding to those attacks.
James Carville made the argument over the weekend that Senator Sanders isn't a Democrat, he's an ideologue, and we've got to get practical. If he is the candidate, he is not going to be able to help win over the Senate.
Does practical mean that the 89 or so million people who are uninsured or underinsured in this country continue to suffer? Does being practical mean that we don't take steps in this country to deal with climate chaos and bring world leaders to bear? Does being practical mean that we continue to prop up a legal system that is unjust in every stretch of the imagination, that bears its weight down on black men and black women, and then by extension, if you are Hispanic or indigenous or poor? Does being practical mean that we don't say to the American people that you deserve better than what you are getting? That's not the kind of practicality we want. Does practical mean that you hold fundraisers and wine caves with Swarovski crystals with billionaires who want to control this system? Does practical mean we continue to go with the status quo while 500,000 people sleep on the streets at night? That's not practicality. So with all due respect to Mr. Carville, what the American people in this country need, they need somebody that is unabashed and that has the courage and the conviction to stand up for them and to call out the rigging of this system.
I mean, it doesn't get much stronger than that.
So good. I mean, and this I think speaks to the heart of what is so horrible about the attacks on Bernie Sanders for being a democratic socialist, which is that it completely bypasses reality. That Nina Turner just mentioned, I think, 7 different issues, everything from homelessness to incarceration to climate change to healthcare in one long breath. And that was more coverage than most news outlets do in an entire day. So this is someone who's actually in touch with reality. It's someone who's in touch with real people struggling. And she's bringing that and saying, yeah, it's not that radical if you look at where people are at. It's not that radical if you look at where Trump has taken us, which was already bad, 3 more years down this hellhole, right? And so even just to get back to quote unquote normalcy will require a radical agenda, but moving forward is gonna require some actual vision and some plans. So hats off to Nina in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we want an ideologue. When a candidate's running, they're supposed to promise you the moon. They're supposed to aim high. I don't think a candidate's supposed to, I'm gonna go right about here, right? You know what I mean? You're gonna make promises, and then when you get in office, you do the best. Hopefully, you would do the best you can to make these things happen. So, this is the thing with the hatred toward Bernie. I think like if you're Carville, this statement gets you in the news. You know what I mean? Like that's part of his job.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm underestimating this, but I don't think the Democrats who haven't decided yet, let's call them Democrats or whatever, I don't think they don't automatically hate Bernie. And the stuff Bernie is talking about is what people need and what people want. So people are gonna listen to it. So I think in this situation, you're giving too much credit to James Carville. That honestly, I think you're giving too much credit to what.
She
remember,
just said that.
He's a talking head. That's his job. And if you're a talking head and you can't stir up enough controversy that somebody's mentioning you, then you're losing your job. You know what I mean? So
we're talking hearts here.
Yeah.
We're not talking heads. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm done.
It could be both. Yeah, and his head is in now, but his perspective is maybe early 2000s at best, maybe the 90s. And I know that like what Nina Turner talked about there, and the way that they attacked Bernie at the debate, where like the first 10 questions are, hey, all of you, attack democratic socialism. Isn't it crazy? Aren't we gonna lose if we got that? Look, the term democratic socialism is new to a lot of people. The philosophy, the ideology is not. There's easily 100 million democratic socialists in this country. They just don't know it yet. But they have been craving a candidate that expresses those values, who champions that platform for a long, long time. And it is just amazing, the media figures, they just don't get it. So they have someone like Nina Turner and they don't know how to respond. Okay, with that, we do need to take a break, but stick around because Joe Biden, he has decided to go low against Pete Buttigieg. It's gonna be interesting after this.